Exactly.
Here at Creative Pinellas, and so excited to hear the Freemans give their talk today. I saw their work because of, and I'm going to introduce our CEO in just a minute, but what Creative Pinellas does, which is a lot of things, one of the things is it gives grants out to artists, and our artist laureate this year is Jake Ann Jones. And she was part of the creation of this amazing Afro-Futurist festival. Did anybody attend that? Was anybody there? It was amazing. So thank you. And we actually had an event the same day, and I couldn't go, but I was looking online for everything, and I saw the work the Freemans were doing, and it was so fascinating and beautiful. And they were so generous. They hadn't been thinking about putting on an art exhibition with it, and so this isn't even the beta version. I'd say this is like the alpha version, and the goal is that this is the one of the first steps in their project to bring this to the world. And we're hoping that in a couple of years, we'll bring them back and we'll see where this has gone. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce the CEO of Creative Pinellas, Barbara St. Clair.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. This is so exciting. Whenever we fill this auditorium, we are thrilled to the max. There's a long story about Creative Pinellas in this space. If you want to hear it, find me after this event and I'll tell you the whole story. But one of our jobs at Creative Pinellas has been to try to bring this space back to life. And that is why seeing all of you here, having the Freemans here, having the activity in the gallery is so thrilling to us. There's another introduction after mine, David Warner, our wonderful president, and he will talk about the Freemans and sort of fill you in a little bit more about the day. I want to take this time to sort of ask, I believe there's some artists in the room. Anybody an artist? Okay, so if you have not gone up to creativepinellas.org to our grants section, I encourage you to do that. We have a professional artist grant that is open right now. What? I'm sorry. The grants are they're unencumbered, so you get to use the funds how you would like. And it's for professional artists, it's a $5,000 grant. We will give 10 of them, plus our Artist Laureate grant. So please check that out, see if it speaks to you. We also have, right now, we're recruiting for our Co-Starters program, and that is a 10-week training program. If you're an artist, an arts organization, an arts business, we will pay your tuition for that. And it's a 10-week program to help you really make your art work into an arts business and help you figure out who your market is, how to sell your work, how to price your work, how to make money. And just about everybody who has been in it has been thrilled and say it's life-changing. So you can also apply for that. There's some other opportunities online as well.
So I'm going to interrupt because the camera, we're streaming it into the gallery. So you need to block the frame.
Hi, everybody. I'm here now. I hope you heard me, even if you weren't able to see me. I'm going to step away now that I'm on camera. Again, thank you all so much for being here. Our reception will be after, and Creative Pinellas staff, as well as myself, will be here. We can answer questions. We can talk to you about the organization. And we hope that you come. If this is your first time here, we hope that you come again. If this is your second or third or whatever time, thank you for being part of our community. Really appreciate it.
Hi, everybody. Yes, I'm David Warner. I'm the president of the board of Creative Pinellas. And I'm here just to introduce the couple behind the fascinating, thought-provoking, gorgeous work that is now on display, as you'll see if you haven't already seen it. And not surprisingly, it's the work of a fascinating, gorgeous couple whose the scope of their interest is kind of mind-blowing. So I'm going to have to read this to you. McArthur Freeman II is a visual artist and designer whose work explores hybridity and the construction of identity. His works have ranged from surreal narrative paintings and drawings to digitally constructed structural objects and animated 3D scenes. His most recent works combine three interrelated emerging technologies: digital sculpting, 3D scanning, and 3D printing. Freeman is currently an associate professor of video, animation, and digital arts at the University of South Florida, where he continues to use digital tools to address traditional processes as he explores hybrid ways of making and thinking about art. Dr. Elizabeth Hordge-Freeman is a Tampa native and a sociologist whose work addresses the intimate ways that systems of oppression, racism, sexism, and colorism are reproduced through the material and affective experiences of Black women and families in Brazil and in the United States. She's the author of 3 award-winning books and the recipient of a Fulbright Fellowship, among many other grants and awards. Her TEDx talk, called The Color of Love, is available to view online. Dr. Hordge-Freeman is an associate professor of sociology and this interim associate vice provost for faculty recruitment, retention, and engagement at the University of South Florida. Now, talk about a power couple, right? So I guess it's my pleasure to get out of here, away from this camera, and this can start.
I think I'm going to need your microphone though.
That would be helpful.
There's a way to do this.
That's gorgeous. It's perfect. Thank you. Perfect.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here today. I'm Elizabeth Hordge-Freeman.
And I'm McArthur Freeman.
And we just want to welcome you to Imagine Blackness, Alternate Realities, and Collective Dreaming.
First, we just want to thank Creative Pinellas and the team for this opportunity, especially Senior Director Beth Gelman, who reached out to us for the show, but also Freddie Hughes, Roman Black, Kelsey Ruiz, and others who've been working behind the scenes. Some of you have already had a chance to walk through the gallery and see some of the work, while others of you may be seeing the works for the first time in this presentation.
Let's see, I want to make sure I know. There we go. So we are the creators of this show, and we're also married, as you have heard. We've been married for 19 years. Actually, this year in December will be 20 years going. Thank you. That's worthy of some applause. But despite this time that we've been together, this is really the first time that we've done a project at this scale and in this particular way. Now, of course, we've partnered in other great creations, namely Janelle and Nathaniel, our kids. But this is the first one. This is really special because it's a collaboration that brings our work together, and it does so using AI.
So we've been working collaboratively under the name Imagine Blackness. So in the show, you'll notice instead of our names, the quotes and other works are attributed to Imagine Blackness. However, Imagine Blackness is just the two of us. So there's no large team that we've assembled or that's working in the background or anything like that, except we actually do collaborate with machines, which we'll talk a little bit more about later.
Let's make sure we can you all see that? Yes. So we wanted to begin by sharing a quote that we think really helps to frame this project. And that quote is, "The map to the new world is in the imagination." And that quote was written by Robin Kelley. Robin Kelley's thought-provoking words really remind us of the limitless possibilities that can be unlocked with our imaginations. But what if we could go beyond simply imagining positive change to actually making change happen? So by inspiring others in this project to collectively dream, we hope to bridge the gap between the imagination and real-world change. Now, to contextualize this collaboration, what we're going to do is we'll have McArthur talk a little bit about his background. I'll talk about my path to this project, and then we'll share images from the exhibition with you.
So as one half of Imagine Blackness, my name is McArthur Freeman, and I'm a visual artist. I'm an associate professor, and I teach in the School of Art and Art History and in the College of Arts at USF, College of the Arts at USF. And I mainly teach animation and digital modeling, but I have worked in a broad range of media, including painting and drawing, digital modeling, sculpture, photography, and animation. And like many things, the seeds of all those creative interests have been with me since I was a child. And even from a young age, I've always been interested in fantasy and storytelling, which has continued to be a central thread in my work. And as far as long as I can remember, I wanted to grow up and create comic books. So you can see this is an image of me or a representation of me reading a comic book when I was a child. And I spent long hours reading them, creating characters, creating stories, and world building. And I was using my imagination to create and tell stories. And over time, I realized the power of images and storytelling, which goes beyond just the enjoyment of making them and also beyond entertainment. As a painter, I've used my works to reflect on social conditions and how the images we see in the stories that we consume play a significant role in how we see ourselves and the world around us. And I use fantasy to talk about real conditions. Those works are a critical reflection, looking at the absurd distortions and absurd events related to anti-Black racism in the US. And that ranges from police brutality, confused notions of beauty, internalized racism, Black representation, and many other issues that touch the lives of Black people over time. Now, it's obvious that myths and constructed images and fantasies have real impact beyond the imagination. They help create how we see and understand the world, and arguably, there's nothing more real than what we believe and how we see. And those stories and images can be empowering or they can be destructive. And historically, Black representation through media is filled with anti-Blackness. So when we're not monsterized, exoticized, marginalized, we're simply omitted, and often from the past, the present, and future. We consume movies and stories and media where we don't exist, and or where anti-Blackness is firmly rooted. So while it's possible to see ourselves in all stories, we have become accustomed to living through whiteness and understanding Blackness through whiteness. I remember clearly my son asking several times when watching movies and television shows, where are the Black people? And why is that character the main character? In this image, just my imagination, these are older paintings of mine, but just my imagination, a young Black girl mirrors the blonde flowing hair of her white doll as she projects and develops her sense of beauty. The boy in the background embraces the General Lee as he looks up to the good old boys from the Dukes of Hazzard. So from the moment that we're born, every image and every story that we're told shapes our vision of the world and our place in it. But are we at least able to escape in the realm of fantasy? Last year, I was part of a fellowship program from the USF Humanities Institute that included two other Black faculty from USF, Dr. David Ponton and Dr. Tangela Searles. Our proposal was titled Reimagining Blackness, Storytelling the End of Racism, during which we discussed a range of topics around ideas of Blackness and storytelling, talking about Black utopias, Black horror, Black love, Afro-pessimism, Afro-Futurism, and through popular media, poetry, visual art, history, and contemporary issues. Hi, David. So one question that came out of that discussion early on is, what is the value of thinking about Black utopias and fantasizing about what could be when we have very real and present issues to deal with? And an answer to that discussion is that utopias are always created in response to the issues of the current times and conditions. They allow us to brainstorm, they give us ideals to pursue and alternatives to the current conditions. And with those visions in mind, we may be able to see our way out, plan our way out, problem solve, imagine something beyond what the current limits allow. So to move forward, we must allow ourselves to dream.
So different from McArthur, though I was always interested in fantasy, I grew up dreaming of being a queen. And now this was in no small part due to the fact that I already had the most important thing, the name. I was already Elizabeth. I was just one step away. All I needed was the title, right? That was one thing I needed. That's what I thought. But a kid of the 90s, a kid of the 80s, I soon realized that this was an impossible dream because from what I saw, there were no Black queens. And if there were ever going to be a Black queen, she most likely never looked like me. I wasn't fair-skinned, I wasn't ambiguous looking, and therefore not considered racially palatable to white people, and not even to some Black people. That's how anti-Blackness impacts all of us. So my realization that I would never achieve that ideal, rather than being demoralizing, was actually liberating. What it meant is that it freed me to affirm an identity that was much more authentically mine. But that took time precisely because of those early imprints of fairy tale imagery that were replete with white or blonde princesses and what seemed like an overall invisibility, which made it difficult for me to situate who I was and who I could be. So as a sociologist, I've researched how the messages that we receive, both implicit and explicit, and how these messages specifically impact Black people in the US and Brazil, and that was described somewhat here. I've traveled to Brazil to explore the global dimensions of oppression with a focus on the intersectionality of how race, class, and gender shape how Black people envision themselves now, how they think about the past, and what they think about the future. So from children being denied food, schooling, or affection for being too Black, to Black women exploited because it's believed that they are born to serve, and to me experiencing both the pain and privilege of what it meant to be a Black American in Brazil, all of these experiences clarified for me the importance of really being able to understand that the battle against some of these systems of oppression and white supremacy is a global struggle. So I spent the bulk of my research searching or studying pretty intense topics. I look at race-based trauma, violence, slave-like exploitation, all of those things. And as I waded through all of the troubling data, one of the things that became clear is that there's so much more to our lives and our dreams that needed to be shared. So in 2020, many of us experienced a type of collective trauma over George Floyd's murder, a feeling that we find familiar as videos of Tyree Nichols' brutal beating now circulate online, what feels like a horrific deja vu. So as an act of self-preservation, we've asked each other, McArthur and I, how do we mobilize effectively in this moment, and how do we move forward from trauma to hope and liberation? So a few months before the murder of George Floyd, I had started to ponder this very question. And my response was the creation of a series of videos that had, and series of videos that I created. I was able to do that because I had a great content editor and producer, McArthur. So the goal was to address forms of systemic oppression, but to do so by focusing on interventions that work rather than complaining about all the things that were wrong. And so I wanted to build a formula that was rooted in truth-telling, but that could also leave viewers feeling positive or feeling optimistic rather than defeated and depressed. So the tagline for the videos was "Live the good life, live the sweet life." And in fact, hints of that project can be found in this project as well. So over the last year, we've been thinking about these questions, even more about Black representation, liberation, and ways that speak to our research, our creative activity, and our personal lives. We've been attuned to the importance and the impact of racism, the impact of distorted misrepresentations of Blackness, but we've also done that alongside recognizing the potential created when we control our images and we produce multidimensional representations of Black experiences. So the transformative impact of the release of Black Panther, for example, The Woman King, and new television shows inspired us to ask, what if we had more agency over our images? What if in fantasy and in fiction, Black people are protagonists rather than secondary characters? What if the stories that were told were more closely reflected our own dreams? With the Imagine Blackness project, we share several images here that provide you a look into the window of the visual playground where our dreams unfold. So when Creative Pinellas originally reached out to us to share our work, we quickly started to brainstorm about what we would include and how everything would work together. So in the gallery, you'll notice that the work breaks down into 3 different gallery spaces. Some of you may have had a chance to see it already. Some of you are waiting until after. The first space, though, includes a series of botanical-inspired images. The center room includes a selection of our images that circulate on a video, and the last room includes postcards from the future, with reimaginings of existing fairy tales and fantasy, explorations of Black and African culture, science fiction, and speculative narratives about the future and alternate realities. All of the spaces are intended to evoke the question, what if?
What if this was Sleeping Beauty?
And here we're intentional about carrying or capturing her natural hair, her glowing brown skin, her facial features, and we open the space to the possibility that perhaps she's not waiting to be awakened by a prince's kiss. Maybe she's sleeping because she enjoys a nap. Maybe there's another story here that doesn't involve a prince at all. You know, how might this visual representation open the doors for us to think or totally rethink these ideas? And we explore a number of these fairy tales, including Cinderella, Snow White in the show, so you'll have a chance to see that.
What would Black elves look like?
And this is interesting because when we were putting this together, you all may have been following this. There were some controversies about elves and a controversy even about the House of Dragon, where there's a controversy about the Black man who appears in the show who's not supposed to be there because he's Black, although the show is fake and mythological, but somehow people were upset that he's there. So we're creating these images in this broader context of absurdity, but we still think it's an important intervention.
How would their lives be different?
So beyond the visual, I mean, there's an entire story to be thinking about, right? So we're not simply just replacing Black bodies, but how might we think about the visual representation and the stories that they bring?
What if we created Black fairies and mythical beings? What would their powers be? And would they use pixie dust or something else? What if we reimagine classic mythology with characters like Medusa or Perseus?
This is one of my favorite images, in part because Medusa herself is so misunderstood. How many of you know the real story of Medusa? Can I just ask this? I'm fascinated by how much people don't know the real story. So the reason why Medusa has a hair full of snakes is because she rebuffed the advances of Poseidon. He ended up raping her in Athena's special sacred space, and Athena was upset that she was raped and punished her by having her hair have a head of snakes. And I think that there's something really powerful that I identify with this equated with deadly ugliness. But she was not ugly. She was actually really beautiful, which is why Poseidon targeted her. But in this image, she's regal. She repurposes the very tool intended to punish her as a decorative headdress. So there's something I really enjoyed about creating this image and really retelling that story. You can't. It's almost as though you can't extinguish her beauty even when you try. There's something really powerful about that.
What if we reimagine images of African gods and mythical figures?
And this image really builds on some of the experiences I had in Brazil. I think there's at least one Brazilian in the audience here. Candomblé is an African-derived religion in Brazil. Xangô is the god of thunder. And so we also wanted to not just retell old stories, but unearth some of the more historical and traditional African history and mythology. So this is part of it. And there are other figures that are also produced as well.
What if Black children were empowered to explore the outer realms of the galaxy? What if we developed communities in space? What would our encounters with space be like or look like?
And I think even bigger than that, what if we had already been to space thousands of years ago? What if humans actually came from outer space, right? How can we open up the doors to our imagination and creativity to think completely differently about what we know?
What if we envisioned ourselves envisioning the future? While drawing on culturally familiar sources.
I should mention that this piece was inspired in part by carnival imagery. So I wanted to think about these large kind of annual parties. What would it look like in the future to have these carnival costumes? How might we use AI to help us bring this together?
What if our bodies were part machine or part human? In these thought experiments, we were intentional about highlighting the types of racial features that have historically been devalued. Our creative process was directly informed by our own research and hierarchies of beauty and stigmatization of Black-looking features. It also speaks of the uncertainty about the coexistence between humans and machines, especially now. What if the time-space continuum was not clear-cut? Our works tend to be dark, or some of these works tend to be beautiful, dark, and weird.
And I feel like McArthur tends to teeter on the dark and weird side of that. And I'm much more interested in creating beautiful products or beautiful images. But what that means is it actually works really well because the exhibition ends up being this perfect mix where it's actually beautifully haunting, which I think is what we wanted to accomplish. Or I guess you'll tell us if that's what we accomplished. So what we've just shown are all the images, not all of them, but some of the images that you'll see in room 2 and circulating again as part of a video on a monitor. So as Beth started to say, we began by sharing many of these images on Instagram. We were so excited about this and we wanted to share these images with the rest of the world. So 6 months since we started, we've created over 15,000 images and posted about 244 of them online. So creating this sheer number of images, 15,000 images, would have been otherwise impossible to do in 6 months without the help of AI. That is, AI as an artificial intelligence. And unless you've been hiding under a rock, you should know that AI is here, it's here to stay, and there's a lot more to come. And if you haven't used it yourself, you may have at least seen it popping up on your Facebook or Instagram feeds or social media channels that you use. But while some of you may have already strong feelings about AI art, others actually might still be asking, what exactly do you mean by AI art?
And the type of AI that we use includes images that are digitally generated by the use of text-based prompts. And that's different from traditional art. We work with computer software in an iterative process where we tweak and make adjustments to our text prompts. In other words, we describe what we want, and the computer tries to give us something very similar to that. And that includes descriptive, stylistic elements, or stylistic elements until we have an image that captures our vision. Viewers often ask, who is that person, or is that person real? And the answer is no, none of the people who appear in the show are real. They do not exist. Moreover, the beauty of working with AI software is that the images that we produce are unique images that will never be reproduced again, even if we use the same prompt. While this all sounds simple enough, it's actually far more complicated than that to produce the images that are in the gallery today with the same quality, style, or detail.
So we started using AI image generators about, as I mentioned, 6 months ago. And at first, we gave it simple prompts like make an image of an apple, make an image of an apple on a table, make a blue apple. It didn't take us long to realize the potential of this tool. And so as we scrolled down the feed of thousands of people creating images using the same software that we were using, their images were also these neat images, but none of them looked like us or reflected our image. So we viewed this as a chance to create novel images and also to impact the AI system itself by training it to interpret and understand our prompts that were focused on Black representation. So the technology has drastically improved, and with those improvements, so have our own images.
Context matters. This all happened right around the time that the Little Mermaid trailers were coming out on social media. And what was notable was the anger that some people felt about their beloved image of Ariel being portrayed as a Black character. And alternatively, we also saw the glee that little Black girls expressed in the videos about seeing someone that looked like them. And we were thinking, what are some of the ways that we can imagine Blackness, or we can imagine Blackness?
So we didn't know it then as we were thinking over these questions, but our desires to do that, to imagine Blackness in this way, put us in direct dialogue with Afro-Futurism. So Yatasha Womack, who's the foremost scholar of Afro-Futurism, describes the genre as an intersection of imagination, technology, the future, and liberation. But what puts the Afro in Afro-Futurism is that the foundational center of this idea is firmly located in Black culture, African and Black aesthetics, African cosmologies, and things of that sort. Octavia Butler, for those of you who like sci-fi books, recognize her as the mother of this type of Black sci-fi, and her legacy, we think, is really embedded in some of the images in our approach to this work.
This is all exciting, but many folks may have questions about how all this works. This is a screen capture from Midjourney, one of the software packages that we use, where we create and craft text-based prompts that describe what we want to see within a minute or so. The computer then creates a new image. And we can create variations or modify our prompts to get closer to what we intended. It's a process of both invention and discovery as we collaborate with the computer. For the images, we use Midjourney or DALL-E, which is another AI image generator. And it literally starts with the prompt, imagine, waiting for us to tell it what to do next. I can see some people asking, how does AI help? It seems that if we truly want to evoke an authentic and empathetic representation of Blackness, we could just write stories ourselves and create images in a more deliberate and personal way. But this is about dreaming and discovery and possibility and options in ways that we hadn't imagined as well. Moreover, it's about immediacy and where we put our energy. We could probably take any of these images and create full written animations or novels or graphic novels or films. But ultimately, our goal is not to produce the perfect image, but to create and plant the seeds, to offer a range of possibilities for world building where there's an ongoing lack of representation. We want to see that story with the Black elves, the Snow White with the kids, or the kids in space, and promote new stories. But we can't make them all. But just like the utopias, when we develop a vision, it brings us one step closer to getting there. It is a proof of concept. And to start, we just need to imagine it. Since starting to create these images, for instance, a few days after we posted this image on our page, our Instagram page, we received a tag from an artist that used the image as the basis for a mural that he created in Brazil. I couldn't even read his post, but Instagram had a built-in feature to translate. And my wife, who also speaks Portuguese fluently, made a chance for us to be able to exchange messages with him. In fact, about 10% of our followers are from Brazil. The global reach of this project has been astonishing. And to be able to see the size of the Instagram page grow over time and see the feedback that we were getting. I think about, what was it, maybe 4 months in? About 4 months in, we probably had
120 followers.
120 followers, but we also, often we would get a post that might have at most 20 to 30 likes. Whereas now we've moved to over 10,000 followers, and often posts get 1,000 responses.
And so that brings us to the other part of the exhibition. So as we mentioned, the work breaks down into 3 different spaces, and you'll see that in the gallery. And so we've shown you the images that circulate on the video. Now we want to discuss the images that are part of the botanical series. The botanical series allows us to connect with this particular space, which is located in this idyllic natural setting, which adjoins the Florida Botanical Gardens. And as well, it served to bridge our work with Yolanda Sanchez's work, who we share this space with right now, and whose work also emphasizes nature. So we'll go through a few of these images that you can expect to see. The figures in the botanical series are posed in a way that highlights a sense of being regal. We wanted them to be so striking that it's hard to look away from them. They exude both a type of beauty, confidence, and our choice of color plays with ideas about gender, about notions of masculinity as well.
All of the images possess a sense of self-assuredness, and it was important to incorporate kids here in the notion of butterflies in this one, which speaks about ideas of transformation and possibility. Along with this, we created text as well. For instance, this one says, "We will never stop blooming. Our growth represents our courage and resilience."
And the text piece was important because, we mentioned that we posted these on Instagram, but we were debating on whether or not we could get people to think beyond the images by creating these other text statements to go along with them. This is another image that's part of the series. Again, our color patterns, our use of natural hairstyles, her facial expression, all of this really helps to capture the vision that we imagine for this set.
This one is called Thrive, and when we made it and posted it, it was accompanied by a quote, "We are flowers that thrive in the face of diversity." Adversity.
The serenity of these images was intentional, right? We had a few images that we associated with the idea that it's time to rediscover ourselves in nature's embrace. This idea of peacefulness and serenity are really important themes as we think about some of the challenges and stressors that Black people face in the US and around the world.
In this final set of images, we juxtaposed flowery, colorful images of muscular Black men who are pensive, resting, exhibiting strength and peace. Like the flowers that thrive in the face of adversity, we boldly stand against the wind, making our armor and our markings our armor and symbols of honor.
So again, I think it was really important for us to show that when we live in anti-Black societies or spaces, the idea of peace and rest for Black people is radical. It shouldn't be radical, but it is. I mean, I think that there's really something powerful about the videos circulating since yesterday and this work and thinking about questions of being able to be still, to exist and not have that existence be threatened. That's radical concept. So in the third and final room, you'll find the postcards from the future installation, which encourages you, the viewers, to be actively involved in thinking about alternate realities and constructing the future.
In the installation, you'll see a wall of postcards sent from the future with underwater city scenes and a futuristic beach or futuristic beach scenes. When you use AI, there are often odd glitches in them that result. We decided to leave some of those glitches in as a critique of the idea that AI will actually create a perfect world. It's open to the possibility to critique the technology, even as we integrate it in our creative process. And as you view the gallery, we encourage you to find the glitches, some of which are bizarre and others which are comical.
This is a close-up of an image directly from the gallery, from Gallery 3, that shows a Black woman feeling comfortable and at complete ease in an underwater oasis. Do we have to literally go underwater to find peace? These postcards aren't just images, they have a message on the back. We were selective about the stories that we tell about the postcards. So the futuristic images, in this case from the year 2137, take place at American Beach. How many of you know American Beach? It's real. American Beach is real, the AI is not. On a real beach. And this beach was purchased by a man by the name of Abraham Lincoln Lewis, a Black man who simply wanted to buy this beach to create a space for Black people to enjoy the beach because they were not allowed to be on public beaches. So this postcard is 150 years later. Black people are doing it. They're enjoying the beach. People are enjoying the beach now too, as well. As part of the exhibit, everyone is invited to fill out a submission slip. So this is where the interactive part comes in. You drop it in a black box and you send it back to yourself from the future. So we actually plan to select a few of these postcards, not all of them. So if you complete it, don't think that you're definitely going to get a postcard. But we will select a few of them that we actually want to make. So we want to hear your visions of the future and we want to make that. And we'll actually post some of the final ones on Creative Pinellas' website. We'll also post a few on our Instagram page. So follow us if you haven't done that already. And please be sure to tell us your vision of this future. And again, this is part of our effort to facilitate what we've been calling collective dreaming. This is a way for us to do that in a much more concrete way.
Again, all of this is very exciting, but we'd be remiss not to mention the ongoing debates. One of the main questions here that has been posed is this art? Those who pose this focus on what they describe as a purely mechanical process, or the purely mechanical nature of the process. And what I hope we've done is illustrate how at every phase, we as creators make creative decisions that shape the final output that we produce. And anytime new technology emerges, folks who are unfamiliar with it respond in a similar predictable way. It was the same with photography, television, mail versus Pony Express, calculators, and the internet. A second question that often comes up is it stealing from artists? Because the AI actually learns from a large database of images. And we think that there was a more ethical way for Stable Diffusion, which is one of the main sort of software AI systems that is in use. They could have used a much more ethical way of approaching its training model, especially as it relates to artist consent. As there are no precedents for this type of technology, which it learns patterns rather than copies. But there are several heated debates about whether the work is fair use or whether it's infringement. And current there's litigation that resolve those issues, whether it's fair use or infringement, allowing clarity in that space for both sides. To be clear, Stable Diffusion could have avoided all of this by just including only images that are part of public domain, and it didn't. But what we also see is that the artists who are most concerned are those who see folks using their names to input stylistic characteristics in their work. We don't do that. We're not here to side with that the software makers. But we think that there are ethical questions. We do think there are ethical questions that need to be addressed, but we aren't waiting around for that to be decided before using AI. So as this technology and the models that are used to train the systems are evolving, they are evolving daily, and many of these issues are already starting to be worked out as new models are created. So we see an even bigger problem, which is the sheer amount of bias in the system. While that's apparently less of a concern to artists who are critics of AI, it's pretty central to what we're thinking about. And both concerns are valid.
So we wanted to give you an example. What does bias look like? I'm a sociologist. I mean, this is fascinating stuff. So what we decided to do was create a prompt for Midjourney. We basically said, show us a picture of a medical doctor. We did this over and over and over. I could say that 148 times, and this is the image. I mean, it's over and over. Interestingly enough, it was almost as though it was a fluke. One time, one of the men was actually a light-skinned African-American man, and we thought, oh my gosh, where did this come from? But then it went back to everybody else. This has been interesting. This is really an important opportunity, right? So our work with this project has involved efforts to overcome bias. It takes us a long time to produce the images that we want because the system was just clearly not used to creating Black people. And so in some ways, we feel like the work that we're doing, we have these great pictures or images that are produced, but it's also an effort to train the system or really retrain the system. And so even while those debates are happening, these systems are still learning. And so we want to be part of that learning and really be able to input it with information that we think will make it less likely to be biased. The other example I wanted to share, again, you all heard that I'm interested in colorism and racism. We've produced 15,000 images. We have not been able to produce one image where a Black woman who's next to a Black man is actually darker than that Black man. So it's almost as though the system can't process the idea that we want a dark-skinned Black woman and a lighter-skinned Black man, even when we tell it to do it. And I think that this is also connected to the way that it's understanding, the way that it understands what couples should look like. I mean, this tells us a lot. We literally could not do it. So there are other biases that we can talk about in the question and answer, but we wanted to give you all a sense of some of the things that we're also thinking about this process. So we have a number of things to talk about as it relates to what's next. Do you want to talk about some of this, or should we wait for the question and answer?
We can wait.
Okay, so there's a lot that's next. We'll let you ask us if you want to hear about that, because I'm sure there are some other questions that folks have. I think the last thing that we want to leave you with is it's a quote that's from Imagine Blackness. You want to read that?
And that's that dreams as an act of resistance are both subversive and rebellious. They create new routes of escape from the confines of reality. Let's keep dreaming and working to construct a new reality together.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we're excited to hear your question rule here, and that you actually ask a question. So we are going to have a reception afterwards, and you are welcome to talk with the Freemans and express your opinions to each other and to the Freemans. But for now, it would be helpful if it was a question.
Could you, McArthur, explain that first painting you did? You explained the second painting, but the first one, I was curious what all those images were communicating.
That's a loaded question.
I'm trying to think of that
It was
was
your first slide of your painting.
okay. So I had a painting called "Give Me Some Sugar."
Yeah.
And really, I mean, I guess the general answer is that it was really about consuming images or ideas about Blackness. And it was also about that, and also pacification.
There.
Right, consuming ideas about Blackness and also about pacification. So there are several tropes that are in here. Stereotype, for instance, the characters that are there. There's a based off of Aunt Jemima. There's a bank, so Black collectibles, Black racist collectibles are as part of it. But also, it's just it was several different stereotypes that they're sort of consuming in the image. So, there's all this idea of being fed this candy. It's really about cultural production. In a way, it's actually related to some of the things we talk about here in terms of like, what are the images that are consumed, and then how do they affect us over time, and how do we internalize them? So, I mean, without picking out the individual things that are happening.
Could you tell us at least one?
So, well, I mean, if I describe things that are in there, there's the one of the main characters there. I've named her Nasty Jemima. She has multiple arms, multiple breasts as well, based off of that mammy type figure. The young boy is taking his heart over to her in her cart, and he's giving it to her. She's grinding into this chocolate or black stew, and then giving, or chocolate sort of stew, and then selling it back to them.
Thank you. Hi. Good morning. Or afternoon rather. I have a I was really struck by the images of the black men with the botanical markings. I'm curious about the specificity of the language that you gave the AI for that, because of so many in the public media, the opposite version, specificity of the language that you used.
Really remember the exact, but I mean, I can guess at some of the things that we would have described. I mean, we would have talked about tattoos. They're sort of the floral patterns, botanicals, the type of garden base that they were in, the poses we could also describe. There's also in terms of like how we would actually get them to be in the garden, with their build. So there's a lot that you can describe along the way to kind of get the final image. Yeah, even lighting and color. Yeah, lighting, color, composition.
Pose.
Yeah, pose.
Types of poses.
I would ask a question about, I find it interesting because when you mentioned and demonstrated, typically, so AI doesn't have an issue with rendering Black people, but what you pointed out is the difference and the difficulties in rendering relationships. So like you mentioned, and we've shown the doctor, and also the difficulty of a dark-skinned woman and a lighter-skinned Black man. So,
Yeah.
so my question to you is, what can we do to change that within the system? What is it? The language? Is it? How deep can we go? Do you feel to address that?
I think there are a few things. So for instance, we wouldn't have a problem getting an image of a Black doctor. The issue is that there will be no Black people or women or other races or ethnicities represented if we just ask for a doctor. So the default is never non-white, and in this case, non-male.
Or the
right?
default was always white male.
It's always, yeah. So so that means we always will have to do extra effort and find ways to get that representation to happen. I think in that particular case that Elizabeth was talking about with the couples, it doesn't matter how much we describe it. We've worked on that, and it just will
It won't
not.
do it.
I mean, no matter. I mean, we've done some pretty aggressive descriptions to. I mean, to get that to happen, and it just won't happen.
And can I tell you something that's really interesting about that? If we said red dinosaur and green banana, it can do that. You know, it can do all these other things. So I mean, that for me, that says something about the algorithm that's just failing to allow that to even compute. And so it opens up so many other questions, and what else is like that? And we only have so much information about the algorithms themselves, right? So part of what we're trying to do by asking for dark-skinned women that appear in the same space as a lighter-skinned man is to hopefully allow the system to understand that this is also something that folks might ask for, that it'll have to produce, and when it doesn't, we give it a sad face to say you failed. But it's been failing and it hasn't corrected itself. The other alternative might be to make sure that the images that the AI is trained on has broad representation. And so when we talk about representation, there's some assumptions that we make. Even when we see that even if we would qualify the Black medical doctor, what does that doctor look like? Will the doctor be dark-skinned? Will it only be a very light-skinned Black doctor? So there are all of these nuances that we're trying to bring up that are also informed by some of the research I've done, but some of the experiences that we both have. So it's a challenge, but we see it as a huge opportunity to at least be putting these issues on the table.
So have you thought to actually connect with the software company and ask them about that?
You know, I will say I haven't thought of doing that, but we could. Oh,
But what I was going to say is we haven't, but a colleague of mine by the name of Ellis Monk is a sociologist, and he has. And what he's done is he's collaborated with AI software companies on palettes. Palettes are just skin color, right? Both he and I work on colorism in Brazil, so it's been interesting to watch him collaborate with AI. I should reach out to him, and I haven't done that yet, but I've kind of watched that. So I think that there probably would be space to think about that. I mean, there's so many things that we're learning that I imagine the software company is not even thinking about what we know to be true about what the gaps are. So I think that you're on to an opportunity for us, giving us more work to do, Monica.
That's what I always.
We'll take it.
We're
I'll help.
going to take maybe 2 more questions. Is that good?
Thank you and good afternoon. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. And so another opportunity to add more work, maybe as we think to change the mindset of our young people, right, our children, is there opportunity or can you speak to how this particular work can influence the Disneys, the Universals, as they move into, you know, trying to capture these images, right, to enlighten not only our children, but many of us who are adults?
But what I'll start off by saying is that it's been interesting that this Instagram, if this was not, we didn't plan to do this. This was something that we were doing for ourselves to create a space of peace in the midst of absurdity. But the Instagram page has grown, and we've been. I'm sorry about the microphone.
No,
I hope it's not me.
don't.
Okay. So folks have been contacting us because they want to produce some of the things that we're creating, and so it's been interesting to have received so much great feedback from folks in the industry who would be influential in those very spaces. So we are open to those collaborations and possibilities, and I think we see them as likely.
I mean, I think that, well, to add on to that, I think the thing that's interesting is that it empowers us to make our own, right? And also to have different variations out there, but also allow other people to see them and see that there's a demand and interest.
Right.
And then maybe the Disneys might want to do that, or there might be other ways for other groups, for other people to say, let's actually get behind this and support it. One of the things I was thinking specifically about was the Nutcracker. Well, I'm not sure. Well, or maybe both of them.
You think we have this as a reserve slide. We were hoping for a question like this. Let's see if we can get it.
It's all the way at the end.
Let's see.
I'm not sure if this is connected to sound or not.
I don't know.
Okay, we'll find out.
So we created this during Christmas. Again, just exploring ideas that we have. Let me see the rest before I continue talking. So we thought about this as like a holiday card. We got thousands of likes, people asking for us to make the movie, people asking for collaborators.
And still, I mean, even now,
Yeah,
people say,
still
when are we going to make this happen?
When are you gonna do it?
You need for us to make this
Yeah.
happen? We need to make this
Yeah.
happen. I need this in my life.
So but we also have day jobs, right? Like, this was just our kind of hobby, but it's kind of taken over. But we're excited because what it's doing is it's both it's reaffirming for us that there's this audience out there, but folks are talking to each other. And that's what we really love is so you see all these comments on the Instagram, and then people are talking to one another and they're making connections. And essentially that's what it's all about. It doesn't have to be us to do it. This is really about planting the seeds. And they might grow because we're watering them or because somebody else is. So yeah, thank you for that question.
So I was actually going to say, I know there's so many questions and there's so many hands that we could stay here all day. Instead, I'm going to invite everyone to go and actually see the exhibition. And you all will be available. We have food and drink. But before we go, there were things you wanted to talk about in your last slide.
Oh, what's next, maybe?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, you know what? I'll say one thing that kind of adds on to your question. I think it somehow connects, but this had to do with younger folks, right? So, actually, you mentioned that.
Okay, go ahead.
So, I had the opportunity to do a storytelling workshop on inclusive storytelling with my son Nathaniel. He was the co-teacher of the class. But we were thinking about being able to do an AI workshop as well, so that they actually are able to sort of start to create their own stories and work collaboratively to create new images that are relevant to them.
Well, I think the other things on the list were, I mean, we're still open to thinking about where this will take us. Again, it started as kind of a hobby, now it's become something much larger than we thought. I think that we're positioned nicely with being attached to university, being attached to community organizations. We'd love to come back. And in fact, next month during the African American Heritage Festival, we'll be here because I think they expect over 1,000 families to pass through. We want to be able to share this with them. But we are looking for opportunities, but also trying to weigh them with all the other demands that we have. But we're excited about it.
And now that you're on this image, I should probably say there was an image of me earlier on reading a comic book. Which I remember, I'd have to find that image, but that wasn't the image. We actually generated those images in AI as well. So these are sort of variations of me reading that comic when I was 8 years old.
And I mean, it's real. You put in the epic, you put in the time period, all of these descriptors. So I think there was a question about how specific do you have to be? We kind of had to learn how to do this, but once you do, anything is possible. And what does that mean if anything is possible? These are the images of that wasn't me as a princess. That was not my queen picture. So we also used AI to generate a number of images to represent what it was like for me to be a 9-year-old wanting to be a queen. So that was just one of the images that I chose.
Wow.
But I think that's it for now.
Well, that's terrific. Thank you so much. Can we have a round of applause? It's amazing. So I'll stand to him and say, I'll ignore you and say, so welcome everyone, please, to the gallery. Please have a drink, something to eat, and which you cannot take into the gallery, but you can have it in the lobby. That's what I have to say. No food, drink in the galleries, but we hope you enjoy it, and thank you so much for being part of it.
Thank you. Okay, so folks, before you get up, we have to take a photo for the Instagram page. So we're going to do a selfie, so get ready to smile. You don't have to stay. Thank you.